Hi, everybody. This is Joe Gigrich with the Project Ready podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing how to navigate digital transformation in the AEC and strategies for success. And we have Shaylee Modi Ozo, as always, with us on the panel. But we're also fortunate to have Nicholas Childs, who's a construction account executive for Autodesk. The long and short of it is what we're going to be discussing is look, the industry was traditionally on premise. It's slowly but surely moving to the cloud. I was looking at stats in 2018. It was less than 10% of companies even had a strategy. And today it's about half, is what I read, and growing exponentially. Predicted to grow continuously about 10% year over year for the next 5 years. And just a quick aside there. So, Nicholas, is that also your understanding of where the industry was and where it's going?
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And so, with that, there are challenges. So, that kind of comes back to strategies for success. And challenges around transitioning to cloud-based solutions, having a digital strategy up front, not doing it willy-nilly, and the importance of really having our friend Sala always refers to this basically a digital strategy plan as you start adopting platforms and the like. And of course, important to us is the requisite you have to have a way to integrate your platforms both internally and also to communicate that information, those workflow statuses bridge, that's our workbridge product, between different systems. So let's understand those challenges. And so, Nicholas, I turn to you. This and what prompted our desire to have you on the panel was I had asked you, I said, what's really driving this digital transformation, the interest in what we do and the features that we've been rolling out to market? What's driving that digital transformation in the industry?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and you know, I've been in this role with Autodesk for quite some time and been around the industry, and so I've have kind of an interesting perspective. I would say one of the main focuses or uh, kind of trends that is really driving the industry is the use of models. So when I first entered the industry back in 2015, um, Autodesk had designed models, right? We had Revit, but most of our clients were still in AutoCAD. I think there was just we were just starting to see the larger shift to kind of parametric modeling, and once that shift happened, um, then all of the data behind all of those models became something of importance, right? Um, and and that has transcended both in the government, commercial, private sectors. Everyone is really trying to get access to that data and that model information.
Got it. And one of the things that you had mentioned was in terms of that digital transformation that's being driven from the top down, that owners are really pushing on this. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah. So if you really think about it, when we start to look at a model, right, who does it benefit? Um, the idea of a model or a digital twin, an envelope of a physically built asset, is really gonna end up or should end up in the hands of the owner, the person who is going to maintain that asset. And so owners have a large stake in pushing this. In fact, I would say they are the majority of the industry leaders in either requesting or investigating themselves into this type of interconnected data uh, industry or world that we're going into, right? And we're seeing that across the board, not just in your retail commercial type owners. You're seeing that in government. You're seeing that in oil and gas. I mean, any sector and all sectors are really starting to move over to this idea of interconnected data and more model based data.
Yeah, it's the classic downward adoption, right?
Right, right.
And one of the challenges we see out there, and Shaylee, I'll have you weigh in as well, is there are so many apps and solutions available out there that you have to somehow bring together that information in the context of the project. Shaylee, was there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, definitely. I guess in terms of so many apps and solutions, we have seen people using different point solutions. Like there are apps good at different things, and which is in a way great that there are so many different options and apps available, but that's what makes it complicated as well. When on a single project you have so many different solutions and products, so the data is all over the place. So then the problem becomes to trying to view all of it or get everything in one place and context of the project. But it's just whatever works best at the time. We've seen organizations use a bunch of different point solutions, and then it starts getting difficult trying to bring all of that together.
Yeah, I personally think that point solutions will start to go the way of the world, right? Over time, they'll get acquired and baked into other people's stacks. You agree with that, Nicholas?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Autodesk, we've been acquiring products, new solutions, basically since our start of our big let's call it acquisition cycle was around 2014, 2015 when we acquired PlanGrid, Building Connected, ProEst, all of those solutions that are now what make up the ACC. So totally in agreement, and we're right in line with that motion as well.
Yeah. So, my thing is there's a split of the difference, right? Between trying to get everything done on one platform, regardless of who it is, but then having too many point solutions. And there's some balance therein. We think that what we do is we allow primary systems, if you will, to communicate from the synchronization of workflows, the synchronization of content and documents. And that's where I think you split the difference. You're going to end up with some major platforms. I personally think the point solutions you really have to give a hard look to these days. And then there's that incumbency about bringing all those systems together. I mean, it's never been lost on me that Autodesk was very early with Forge to say, just to recognize that you have to interoperate with platforms that may or may not be competitors. And the reason for that is that's what your clients are demanding, right? They want that digital delivery of information. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, yeah. And if you really think about it, kind of zoom out into the owner space, right? As much of a big player, a main platform as we are to an architect, an engineer, or construction company, when we enter the realm of an owner, we are one of very many tools that run their business, right? That help their business. And in that, there's not a lot of, let's say, innate knowledge in this type of data management. And so that interconnectivity of multiple different databases and tools becomes even more important when we start to look at our large, especially commercial or government owners who are, in some cases, I have clients who have over 180 different types of software that help them run their business, right? Mm-hmm. Day to day. That's every day. Someone is touching 180 pieces of software within their organization that they pay for actively, right? That data is integral to their bottom line. And so having organizations such as yours to be able to connect that data and not only bring Autodesk into the fold, but so many others into their data lakes and dashboards is monumental. It is the way of the future.
Yeah, they have to get it over the finish line, right? All that information. And, so we have clients, a couple of folks that you referred us to, they have to use Procore on the other side because that's what the owner is using or the GC is using. And so we're just finding this increasing request for what we refer to as Workbridge. We do a lot of stuff, but that one, Shaylee, would you agree? That's the one that seems to be really driving things right now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely agreed.
Wind back in history, though, because with half of companies now in the cloud, that leaves the other half that isn't. And what we find when we talk to clients is first they adopt, then they find the problems of interconnectivity. They take a stab at it, but it's still not complete. And I think that a lot of what has to be still addressed is the mindset of on premise, and a lot of investment that was made in developing integrations to on prem systems, right? And then figuring out how that's going to translate back out to the cloud.
Yeah, it's something we deal with every day. It's also one of the riskiest parts of data that I would say I deal with every day. So, when I think when first got into the industry, let's call it 10 years ago, every office had an on-prem solution, right? If you were working in AutoCAD or Revit, you were using your Revit server, you were sharing, you were collaborating. Now in our new age, having those on-prem servers is the most risky thing you can do for your business. And the reason is that is the first area a hacker is going to go after. Because if they can lock that information up, then your business cannot move forward at all, right? And so what we've seen a lot of, I would say maybe not a lot, but a significant and definitely kind of a alarming amount of ransomware, where organizations, their all of their data is being held for ransom until some magical number is paid, and then that data is then released. You can see this happening in all the way from Las Vegas, where they shut down the hotels for a few days, all the way to government projects. It is definitely one of the largest risk areas of any business at this moment, in kind of this data world that we live in.
Yeah, and it kills me because we work with some groups where the IT group is happy to move to the cloud and likes the fact that we know a lot of on-prem and transition and all that other stuff. But man, the number of institutions that you'll go into where they're going, we feel much more secure with our network. And I just have a funny feeling that you can buy as many Cisco firewalls as you want. You're not going to do better than Autodesk. You're not going to do better than Microsoft, right? You have a lot invested in keeping that stuff clean and locked down.
In the world of AI, where the predictability of your password can be generated basically off of the movements that you do by aggregating all of your Google data and basically creating passwords, right? I can predict your password to within a certain level. It is no longer safe to think that your five IT people can write enough code to protect your data system. I mean, these attackers they change every day. Their tactics, their methods, their modes. They use different types of computer systems. They use, as we continue to upgrade the processing power, right? And we approach quantum, then we're going to have very large security risks for many different parts of different sectors. But in first pass, the first people who they're going to go after are always going to be people who have localized data sitting on their computers or sitting on a server in their office, where the value of their organization is based off of the information that they have on those systems, right? It's a pretty scary world to think about, but it is happening.
Staying on-prem is just not an option, right? Major manufacturers, yourself included, more and more are going to go, no, you have to go to the cloud. I'm waiting for Revit to run entirely in the browser. I'm sure it's coming at some point. Yeah, and so one of the other challenges that we face with these companies is they've built a lot of customizations on-prem. And so what we try to do is, we'll chip away. We're very broad and deep platform now. We'll find out a use case that we can address. We help, migrate and segregate content and data, and then kind of roll with it, so they have a chance to catch up and not disrupt the business. Because I think that's a big part of their rightful concern is business continuity and end users who just don't want to change. That's another huge challenge I just find across the board. And the AEC is particularly like that. I don't know if you have found that to be the case.
I do. One thing that I'm it's exciting, but it is definitely something that is changing. Is your traditional IT manager is not the same person. Um, I think that we back in the day, when I wasn't working at Autodesk, our IT manager would always be making sure, are the licenses on? Are we compliant? All of those types of issues that they were just constantly trying to make sure that the company wasn't at risk, right? Now, IT managers need some type of programming language. They need some type of, continuous education credit, so that not only are uh, they are up to speed with how to move that data and what that data is, but then they're also able to help their company interact with that data, right? That is going to be the most important piece, right? Because what you all provide is amazing. You can move, especially with Bridge, right? Moving that information from one area to another and doing that in a way that doesn't disrupt their downstream systems. But, right, along those same lines, there's still that need for, hey, what do we do with that data once we do get it? And then how do I get it from this to that, right? And so just seeing that transformation is also very interesting, as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, particularly on the skill set, right? Your traditional land administrator, if you will, is still obsessed with what I consider to be legacy security concerns, like like your bloody firewall. We've encountered companies where particularly like the infosec groups and the like, they lock it down so much that you can't even communicate adequately between different cloud services, ignoring recommendations from Autodesk, from Microsoft, which I still find kind of astounding. But it's have they fully transitioned? Do they understand the world of web services? Do they understand the innate security around like Azure and AWS? I mean, because the platforms, platform as a service companies, they have a real fiduciary responsibility, a real responsibility to their clients to make sure these things are very, very locked down. And so rather than spend all day and night trying to figure out how you can cripple these products, I agree with you. If they could start to have a mindset around the world of web services and encryption and all of that, they would be much better served.
As well as their owners are requesting that.
Uh huh.
you know.
Well, that is
Mhm.
the other thing they go against, right? Um, we've been at this for more than a few years, and truthfully, when we released what is Project Ready today, we are in a beta for release when we went to AU in 2019. And at first, I thought, well, the pandemic really did not help our cause, but it did. It forced a lot of people to go to the cloud because that's the other thing, right? How do you're going to open up huge files over a VPN? I mean, people do work remotely now.
Right. Yeah. VDIs is a similar situation where virtual desktops were heavily used, and now everything is beyond faster than that old process using cloud-based technology. So, yeah, you're spot on. The industry has to change as well.
And I assume you see that change in the larger places first. If it's the owner, then it's the larger CMs and program management firms next.
I'm seeing it in very, so that is a really good question. At first, I would say yes, right? Big projects can fund new types of technology, new processes, right? That then can be dispersed across the company. That's usually the case, right? If a company's going to dive into new technology, they'll try to pivot it into something big. But because of the way you can create this interconnectivity, It is both used on large projects as well as small projects, just a little bit differently, right? So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing smaller organizations being able to compete with the big organizations by being more efficient and effective with their groups, leveraging technology as their backbone over labor as their backbone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And as I started to say that, I went, but because we have some, because we do have some very large firms, they use the product, but then just go a couple layers in, and they're still using spreadsheets to log 1,000 documents, right? And then conversely, some of our most ardent clients are like 10 architects who broke off from large firms, didn't like the inefficiency of the way things were run, and to your point, they're right up front going, this is a competitive edge for us.
Yeah. The globalization and the ability to get skilled labor through different means has really allowed smaller companies to compete. I mean, it's not just the large GCs who are winning a lot of these projects, especially if you go and look in sectors like data centers, right? Data centers are most of the companies that are building data centers are super technology focused, um, and they're using all different types of systems and technology because the owner of that data center is very technology focused, right? So if you look at the owner of that data center, they really want, what really makes them a lot of money is having things like digital twins, right? Being able to say, hey, I have 15 towers that are available for rent or whatever, however they price those out, right? And basically they want to be able to have an integrated system where they can monitor everything all the way from design into construction and handover. And then once again, they'll probably turn that over to another company in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So that industry, I mean, I love going into that industry and really looking into the players, the people, and the technology, because that is probably one of the more advanced industries. That them in healthcare is also starting to get there as well.
Yeah, they were late, but they're coming to the party pretty hard and fast.
Yeah, they've got a
Yeah.
lot of money.
Yes. For what reason, I don't know a lot of the time, looking at my medical bills. Um, and to your point, we just signed up a client yesterday who, guess what they do? They manage the build out of data centers for their clients. And a couple of their companies. One begins with capital letter M, if you will. They have their system. Their GCs are using Procore. They only want to use Autodesk or sponsor. And so it was that management of synchronization of data and workflow that brought them to us, right? Because and that's the other thing. So a friend of mine, Jeff Walter, is in charge of digital delivery for the firm in which he works. And he was wise, I believe, in identifying the digital delivery. So for the efficiency, labor shortage, all that applies. But when you think about it, going into a client and saying, that data is splattered all over the place and eventually we get to you. What if we could just give it to you in near real time, weekly, quickly? So it removes the burden on the vendor to have to assemble all this content, especially if you're a program manager or a CM, right? And the owner goes, "Oh, cool! They have a strategy. These people are, hip with the times," as the kids would say. But it is. I ardently argue that this is a competitive advantage for firms that go this route, if nothing else, to deal with their owners.
I 100% agree with you, and I can say this from many owners that I work with. If clients, if their clients and the people who listen to your podcast, if you aren't going in to your bid meetings and you're and expressing your technology advancements and what you can do, you're not getting invited to the table, right? So what's happening is owners they're getting really savvy. They can now see who's done projects of their shape, size, feel, right? Um, they can also see things like how were those projects delivered? Were they delivered, digitally? Was it paper? So on and so forth. And what they're really doing is they're not even offering projects to companies who aren't marketing those skills, right? So you're not the companies that are saying, "Oh, well, we don't see anybody asking for that work." It's because you're not marketing that work, and they're not coming to you for that work, right? Because those projects are happening, and from the owner's perspective, not only do they save money in the long run by achieving things like digital twins, but if you remember on the back end, they're getting big tax incentives to provide all of this information to the state and local governments, right? So it's not going anywhere, and if anything, it's gonna get crazier in the next few years.
Yeah, I had a friend who was working for I guess like 200-300 seater out in Seattle, and to her shock and chagrin, when the owner sort of rejected a lot of the stuff we recommended, including us, was, well, we have a girl to go file that. So that was just such a wrong statement on so many levels. And their argument was, we get to charge our clients for all that manual labor. So now you're not price competitive. I mean, it was just such a retrograde approach and statement. I was just kind of shocked, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, it's owners who are taking that approach. I think they are still nervous, and I understand it, right? Because most of the time, at the end of the day, who's going to hold all the risk? It's going to be the owner. Um, but the ones the if you go into your Wall Street Journal, your New York Times, you start looking at the companies that you're seeing exponential growth. You're seeing, large, complex project getting pulled off under time, under budget, right? Those are the companies that are not only just leading the pack, they're pulling away from everyone, because they are they're not only efficiently building, but they're doing so without creating a lot of waste, right? So they're saving so much money, they're getting things in on time, and they're getting those tax incentives. It's kind of a big win in their book, especially if you look towards like the commercial sector, retail markets.
Yeah, it's all about automation at that point, right? Labor shortage, people in spreadsheets, people downloading zip files. This is good for no one. And you're 100% correct. If you can figure out how to automate all the brute force activity that, persists in the industry, you have a huge advantage. You cut back on rework, you reduce risk because you have accurate information. And the other thing I would pick up is that, you know, I have this adage that a project begins with the RFP. And as I always say on these things, as a New Yorker, we're litigious people. And as important as the information as a digital twin is the lineage of approvals, rejections, review cycles, because if anything goes wrong, that's the part lawyers need to work with, right? Is that information of a due diligence on contract.
Right, right. And the worst way to try to get that information is searching through email or
Printed
some
copies of email,
printed copies of email, Mylar
Uh-huh.
sheets. I went into a shop, a pretty large civil firm down south in Florida, and they are amazing people, but they have a printing room of Mylar that they are still bringing out to the site. And I was just sitting there like, man, this is this might be a new experience for me.
It's like Back to the Future, right? And talk about not having up to moment, up to the minute design changes. The downtime of printing and delivering. What are you going to do? Stop working on the model now? That's not good. If you're going to continue to work on the model, those things may not be accurate, right?
Agreed. And yesterday I had a really good conversation about this because I think this is, I think, coming from a model based mindset, right? Um, I think that when we talk, sometimes um, we always talk about this metadata, this model, these objects, and so on. But at the end of the day, these systems have the ability to take a model and make a sheet and create that sheet and associate that sheet to all different types of information, right? And so a lot of the times we miss our clients with, oh, well, this model. Well, we don't use models. The idea is really around you have a document that has a drawing on it of a physical location that exists somewhere in the world or will exist somewhere in the world, right? And that idea where everyone gets kind of stuck in this, I need models. It's not necessarily you need a model. We just need an asset, a drawing, a figure, right? That is going to be persistent. Um, so just a little thing on that.
Yeah, and the audit trail around that, right? Right. That PDF is undoubtedly part of a milestone agreement or delivery and had to get there somehow.
Right.
All right. Maybe I'll turn over to Shaley for a moment here. So, as we've worked with clients who are largely on-prem, had not gone to the cloud, um, what are some of the challenges and remediation that you think, uh, clients can, that's out there for clients?
I think we've definitely seen a lot of different cases where there is still a lot of resistance. We've been talking about it today that people don't really have much of a choice in moving to the cloud, but still there are engineers and there are teams who are just so used to working with file systems and folder systems. And while there are team members that understand the need for the transition, I think still a lot of companies have these internal challenges on getting that resistance where people are not just ready to basically move to the cloud. But on top of that, I also see that there's a big problem. There's years and years worth of data that's there on these on-prem systems that need to move again, depending on what systems they're using, combination of Autodesk, Microsoft, and depending on what makes the most sense. It's that planning and that transitioning where all of that on-prem data needs to be mapped properly, needs to move to places on the cloud where um, it makes the most sense as a team to work on all of these data points and documents now up in the cloud.
Yeah, and I am perennially seeing resistance to formal planning my entire career. Well, we don't need a plan. We just want to get this one piece done. And then people wonder why they have a fractured enterprise. And it doesn't have to be 2 years of planning, but can you at least have some diagram, some roadmap, some decision tree as to what goes from one to the other? And these things are linked at the hip. And but going back, the other thing is how you can assist them. It's everything in life is about the use case. And so if they have some custom thing where they're, you know, automating the production of a document and putting it into a file system, how to assist them to maintain as much of that business process as possible, co-opting cloud technology, even if it's building around, bespoke systems.
Yeah, I think slow transitions always work the best, where to not completely stop what has been going on for all these years, but having that transition where they still continue to do some of it on prem while transitioning to the cloud. And then, as you said, yeah, this a plan needs to be in place that eventually it's all going to be transitioned. But I think that that slow process of one step at a time and then transitioning through that, okay, out of these five, these three steps can now be done on the cloud even though they are starting on prem, kind of a plan needs to be in place.
Yeah, and I'm also very big on phased rollouts, right? Pick a division, pick a discipline, pick a smaller group. And if nothing else, you get internal advocacy.
Yeah, definitely. That avoids disruptions for sure.
And so, Nicholas, what would you recommend to people who are still in the cloud? What strategic approach would you recommend?
Yeah. So this is something that I've actually started working on about 4 years ago. Um, when I was in our named account sector, or our major accounts, dealing with kind of the largest of Autodesk customers. And what I found, and it's persistent as we go forward, is that in order to be successful in the new kind of digital journey world that we're in, companies really need to start with a data management strategy. And what I mean by that is, it's not just about Autodesk or Project Ready or Procore or Newforma. It's who touches information, when do they touch it, how do they touch it, and where does it go after it goes through them, right? It's so important because all of these companies, such as ours, are moving to a platform, or have platforms, right, with open APIs. The idea of an out of the box solution is gone, right? And I say that cautiously, right? You can take our product out of the box and you can use it, but is it going to give you the value that your organization is looking for? Probably not, right? And in order to get that value, you have to build out that solution to make sure that it fits your company's strategic, processes. But the issue that I always find is that companies will separate, right? They'll have their, let's call it their real estate development division, and then they'll have kind of, production. Hey, this is how we make money over here. And but the problem that I keep running into, and I'll use like a retail organization is a good example. A retail company will start and they do a site acquisition. Okay, so they're looking for a site. They say, all right, we're going to build here. Well, there's all of the financial decision making that goes into that process. And then there's the actual site acquisition. And then there's the actual design and construction of the building. And then there's actually putting people into the building to run the building, and then operating that building with supply chains and all of those different aspects of their business. Well, if you really take that apart and look at where the data goes, right, that site acquisition team is also talking to the people's team, right? Because as soon as that site is done, we have to staff it. And as soon as that site is done and the testing is done, the HVAC system has to come on before we can staff it, right? So these pieces and parts that, you take a large organization and really separate it. Construction and design is just as integral to their business as the supply chain in which they're ordering their pieces to sell to their consumers. So they decouple that. And that can't be decoupled when we're talking about a data management strategy, because that data is still passing through all of those systems. So what I've seen is in the best of the organizations, is they take a step back. They look at, hey, we have Word, we have Excel, we have Autodesk, we have Project Ready, we have, let's call it, Box, right? All of these different pieces, they put all of that on a map, and then we start to work through that, right? And once they get to our section, we help them with our section. Once they get to Microsoft section, right, they come in and they help Microsoft section. But companies like Project Ready, where you all can be integral in that discussion, right, around that data management strategy, more so than we can in our kind of our little cove, right? That is really, really important. I would say that is the number one thing between a successful company and a non-successful company in the upcoming and future world that we live in.
And you mentioned the financials and the legal component. I always thought that was just part of the project as well, right? So what we do is, to that point, we usually start the project siphoning the project ID from the accounting system, because all that. To your point, the people who are working in Oracle, the people who are out there, searching for sites and handling the paperwork, the legal, that is as much a part of the project as anything. And what we try to do is pick, a unique ID, drive process over the platforms. We don't store any data or process a platform or business process as a service, right? But yeah, it's absolutely inclusive of all of that. And yeah, you need to know where the data is going to sit now, later, who's going to touch it, what are the security, what's the governance around the movement of data that is really all one built asset at the end of the day.
Right, right. It's a crazy world.
Yeah, but it's a challenge, and it's a challenge I really do think you can solve.
Yes.
Right. And so I'll we've been on here for a while. I'll wrap it up with this. So if you can just discuss with us what Autodesk strategy is around anything, right? AI, new APIs, the general view of the world coming forward.
Yeah, yeah. So I've actually had the wonderful experience. Most people probably wouldn't say, like, 10 years at a company. I've enjoyed it the whole time. I've briefly left, but I worked for a integration partner for Autodesk for a few years. But in general, when I look at how the company has transformed in my tenure, when I first started, Autodesk was really looking at the 2D to 3D transformation that organizations were really trying to figure out, right? Is how do I go from AutoCAD to Revit? And then once I start to build in 3D, what is important? What is this metadata, and what is parametric modeling, right? And we went through years of that, trying to figure out, what's the best method and mode to accomplish designs and projects and so on. And then when Autodesk started to do their acquisitions, I really, it's when I originally came back, and I had been a part of the BIM 360 portfolio prior, and I saw that most of that portfolio, from my perspective, had come from more of a design lead, right? Design collaboration. Docs was really built out of a design tool. And when I saw the acquisition of PlanGrid, Assemble, and Building Connected, it really sparked this kind of passion in me that Autodesk was taking that field first approach, right? And so I've consistently seen that we are really in the world now, especially in the AEC, of taking these different and kind of separate industries and really bringing everyone together to accomplish a holistic and singular project, right? And what I mean by that is, you've seen tools that we've launched like Informed Design, which is really a tool that is designed to keep the right people in the right places. If you're a Revit designer, you are designing in Revit. If you are a production person running a CAD CAM system, you're running your system. But the model is talking to both pieces of software, right? And allowing that designer to live in his or hers level of detail, and your product manager to live in their level of detail. So this convergence of different industries into a project and bringing them closer together in a collaborative space is one of the big things. I think the other side of this is Autodesk. We build best in class tools, right? But we stick to our core competencies, right? We said we're going to go and we're going to win in construction, and we're doing that. But there are many other tools, so many other tools out there, right? And what our position is we will integrate with those tools. We want you as the client to be able to pull us in and plug us into your workflows, your day to day. We don't see it as you need to stop your day to day and jump into our system. And so that is really going to be the approach that you'll see from Autodesk, because we're going to continue to build, open platforms that interconnect with other systems. And really, we're just going to continue to build what we hear from our customers and make sure that we keep the market moving.
Yeah, and two amens for that, because for one, when we go and we speak to clients, they go, does everybody have to work on Project Ready? We go, no. People should be able to live within the system or the tool that they know and that assists their trade. They just shouldn't be siloed, if you will, or that information shouldn't be siloed across stakeholders and the like. Oh, and the other thing is something that I rail about. I won't name companies. I really dislike, you're saying you're to stick to what you know best. It amazes me when I'll see, I don't know, an accounting system decide they're going to have workflows around design and BIM. And you know why they do that. Their rationale has to be, well, we have a Rolodex of clients, we'll upsell. But upsell what? It's like so many of these products you hear on the street where they use two features. So why don't you just focus on the two features and stop selling them stuff that's really not that good? So, all praise to Autodesk for that, and understanding that sticking to your core mission as a platform is much more important than trying to find ways to cannibalize market share, even if the feature that you just rolled out isn't that good. All right. This was great. I love these podcasts. I love these conversations. So I want to thank everybody who's listening for coming, listening again with us, and we'll talk to you to the next time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.